Keep on moving. Keep on moving. Don't stop.
I love that song.
Yeah.
It's my favorite song.
Really?
It's like my morning song.
Uh-huh.
It helps.
Oh, word. She just logged off. That's hilarious.
Pro Brown?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay. Hey, Pearl and Diane, I'll let you guys in just a second. Just want to check in. Pearl, if you can we, I don't know, do I have to bring her to the studio in order to hear her? No? Okay, cool.
Oh,
Okay, just want to check in, Pearl, and see how's it been going, how you've been doing. You know if you can turn on your mic at all. Yes, it might not be
Chinese or
Sure. Yeah. A minute. Now, as people continue to trickle in and hop on to the live stream, one is glad that we are here again. Looking forward to have a great conversation with Miss Diane Gray. And definitely want to encourage everybody to participate via email, via WhatsApp. You can ask questions that way as well, but also in the chat room that we have located on StreamYard. So, acknowledging that some folks are going to be logging in through YouTube, some folks may be able to log in through the Facebook group. At the end of the day, we definitely want to engage the speaker with any types of questions that we may have regarding our own organizations, where we are currently, where we're trying to go in the near future, which steps that we should be taking. And so, with that being said, definitely want everybody to engage. I would definitely be asking questions pertaining to Diane's journey from the very beginnings all the way up to now. And what has been the most helpful, what has been some of the best steps, and even, of course, what are some of the setbacks that have arisen, and how is she able to overcome those, endure those rough times, and with what assistance or with what strategies, right? So definitely, I want to get into that in just a second. Again, in an effort to pay some attention to our mental, emotional health. We're just going to take a second to do a breathing exercise. And from my understanding, this is the box method in which we'll inhale for 5 seconds, hold our breath for 5 seconds, um, exhale for 5 seconds, and then hold our breath for 5 seconds. And we do that about three times. And so for the folks who are able to participate, I'm going to start with an inhale for 5. So awesome, awesome. So again, what I've come across, run into a lot when it comes to having business meetings, business trainings, things around our organizations, is that we get so involved and invested in connecting with the information, all the things that we have to do, people we have to meet, places we have to go, and amidst all of that, our personal lives, our personal health, our time for ourselves, time for the people we love, time for the people that matter the most to us continues to fall by the wayside. And so we just want to recenter not only ourselves, recenter the work that we do, recenter the relationships that we're in, and make sure that those things are not being overlooked. Again, for the folks who are in the WhatsApp chat, in the WhatsApp group, we definitely want to encourage you all to continue to participate, continue to uh, chime in about the things that we're getting from the book that we are currently checking out, which again is The Atomic Habits. And in that book, again, one of the biggest things that it emphasizes is the importance of environment. One thing that he mentioned recently was that every habit should have a home. And that it brings up a really big question. Um, and that question is your house, is your apartment, is your living situation set up to embrace, encourage the habits that you want to have in your life going into the next phase, right? What we have to acknowledge is that each time we check in about the habits that we have to acknowledge where we are right now and where we're going. And a month from now, it may change. In 2 months from now, it may change. In a year from now, we'll definitely most likely have some shifts given the dynamics that we're experiencing and the dynamics that we want to experience. And so I definitely am acknowledging that, for the things that I want to do at home, I want to clear out the space, make space for those habits, make space for those activities. You know, for instance, one thing that we've been doing more at our place has been cooking. And I definitely need to, pay more attention to what's in the refrigerator, what's in the cabinets. Do we have the dishes we need? Do we have the appliances that we need to cook well, to cook often? And as well, are we spending our time when we're eating? Are we eating together? Are we eating by the television? Are we connecting with each other? Are we not connecting with each other? All those things start to come into play. And if we do want to connect, where can we eat such that that's actually possible? Is the TV right there, or is the TV somewhere else? So big questions that are on the horizon, but those are the types of things that we want to consider when we are, in fact, trying to have habits that support what we're trying to do. Where exactly is that habit going to take place? What is the home, if you will, again, of that habit? So, without further ado, I am going to introduce our speaker and our, if you will, our founder for today. and I will be starting by reading her short bio, and then I'll welcome her into the room and we will get started. Let me get back to this email. Okay, cool, cool. So our special guest this week will be Diane Gray, a native of San Francisco and a proud 45-year resident of the Bayview Hunters Point community. Ms. Gray was educated in the San Francisco public school system, graduated from San Francisco State University, and certified in college and career advising from UC Berkeley. She has spent more than 20 years working in various city departments, including the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and the San Francisco Unified School District. She is passionate about education and supporting children and youth to achieve academically and socially to their full potential. Full potential. As the co-founder and longtime executive director of Bayview Association for Youth, which is BAY, she has served hundreds of youth through programs such as 100% College Prep Institute, an after school and school in school program dedicated to preparing youth for post secondary educational opportunities. Her decades of work at 100% College Prep has resulted in a great number of college students, college graduates from the Bayview Hunters Point community and beyond. Ms. Gray is an executive officer and budget and finance chair for the San Francisco Alliance of Black School Educators, a founding member of the Black to the Future Initiative, the City of San Francisco's My Brother and Sister's Keeper Initiative, and Mega Black SF. In the stream, Gray will share her experience with starting her own nonprofit organization. So yeah, let me pull her in and we can get started. Hey Diane, how's it going?
It is going well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share. Yeah, absolutely. I am ready to get started and answer some questions and share some gems, I guess. And yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So of course, definitely wanting to get started with um, the very beginnings. Even in your bio, you mentioned how you were working in various city agencies prior to starting the organization. And so one thing it even brings up is how integral or important do you feel like that experience was in helping you get this thing started?
So yeah, I started off not too long out of college. Was working in retail for a long time. Actually, was studying that in college. Thought that I would be a buyer in a grocery store, and I mean not a grocery store, a department store actually. And yeah, just found myself getting a job with the city, which my dad was already working for the city, and started in small claims, just part time, and then went on to PUC and so on and so forth. Special assistant to the city treasurer, and then found myself in the San Francisco Unified School District, which was the last job that I had or position as a manager of one of their federal grants that focused on college and career. And by this time, had started the nonprofit and had been in this world of college and career. And so it was a really a perfect fit. I had like three positions actually in the Unified School District. One being this manager over this federal grant called Gear Up, and working with the city was very interesting because I moved around a lot. I was one of those kind of people that probably after 5 to 7 years is like, okay, it's a wrap. It's time to look for something else to do. But the experience that I got and the skills that I gained transitioned right over to the nonprofit world,
Mhm.
managing budgets, supervising a team of folks, focused on a mission and a vision that a particular department was built on, or built upon. And so that really, um, gave me the foundation that I needed to move over into the nonprofit. And we'll talk, of course, more about the nonprofit, but nonprofit is a business. And so, in looking at it in that way, all of those positions that I had prior, just built all of that and gave me, that mindset once I moved in, what was needed, how things should look, um, even doing a curriculum and program design. Some of that I actually did, believe it or not, with the city. When I was with PUC, they began to focus more on customer service, which is really weird because it's PUC has a side of it that's customer service and commercial division. Maybe they may call it something else now, but at the time that I was there, and one of the things that I did coming from the retail world and being, immersed in customer service, because it's all about profits, right?
Right.
Is that I actually led a group of my peers to do a customer service workshop over a week long time for a number of folks in our NPUC. And so just all of those experiences, designing that program, going to workshops, doing all of that, it it really set me up for being successful right now in nonprofit. We'll talk again. We'll talk more about it because it took a long time for 100% college prep, which is the program that we're most known for in the city, to like get to this point where we are now. Some of it was my lack of experience or just who I was as a person, and moving along. But yeah, the city really supported that, and all because every position that I had with the city, I made sure that I gained a different skill level. So
Mhm.
once I got to the treasurer's office, left PUC, had been a manager there, just the bureaucracy and stuff, I was ready to leave. Even though you could do a lot of movement in PUC. PUC is like its own, San Francisco PUC is like its own mini city. They have a marketing department, they have everything. But I just was time to leave, and I went over and took a special assistant position with the city treasurer, which had forced me out of my comfort zone. A lot of writing, a lot of writing things for the city treasurer, a lot of accompanying the city treasurer to important meetings and events, and then also just running a section of that, or being part of a team that ran a section that focused on, again, customer service, to our citizens in the treasurer and tax collector's office. And so, again, was able to take all of those experiences, move them to San Francisco Unified School District, and do some of the same things in parent relations, training parent liaisons in our low performing schools in the district, then moving on to customer service in the enrollment office. And then the last position being managing this federal grant, which was a $2.8 million a year grant over 5 years, for the school district. And I was there doing that position maybe for a couple of years, reached 20 years in the game, turned 50, and I was like, I'm out. I took an early retirement, and I don't get a whole lot of, money in retirement because I went out early. But one thing was the medical for life, which was super, super important as I moved into this nonprofit world. And so, yeah, it really built that foundation for me to move on into the nonprofit world. Yeah.
Right, right. Now that is some great information, and honestly, it brings up the question around um, the importance of the work that we do prior to starting our organizations, or even maybe while we're starting our organizations. Because I know that, like you just mentioned, some of our positions have the exact type of problems that we'll need to know how to solve once we have our own organization. And then you mentioned again numerous positions, and so it's the numerous, if you will, hats that
Mhm.
we have to wear if we are intending to start a nonprofit organization. And so even with that, right? Like I'm sure that when starting the organization, you're probably thinking about a few of the hats that you have to wear.
Mhm.
Maybe even to some degree, most of the hats, maybe that you're imagining that you're going to wear. Um, However, there nonetheless are going to be those times where you're like, I've never had to do this, and
Mhm.
I have this situation, and I'm the person that needs to solve it. Um, how would you say that? Folks can be, I want to say prepared, but I'm even thinking maybe even approaching those times in having an organization where they go, you know, this isn't my strong suit. I'm honestly pretty lost, but I have to do it. What types of suggestions would you give for the folks that have to do something that they've never done before?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give a little background in history, I was volunteering in my community, Bayview Hunters Point community. I grew up in the community until I was like 16. My parents bought a home in the OMI, but I always claimed Bayview as my home because that's where all my family were, my grandparents, and the whole nine. And then 16 years later, I moved back and bought a home in the Bayview. So I've always claimed the Bayview as my community. And I was, my cousin and I were volunteering in the community and with a girls group. There was another organization called San Francisco Educational Services, SFES for short. And they actually were in the building where the Bayview YMCA is now. They actually were in that building prior to the Y purchasing the building, which that building was an old Catholic school back in the day. And so we were volunteering there. And after having a conversation with the young women, it was a girls group, ages of about 11 to maybe 14, may have been the eldest. Um, and After having conversations about their careers and their futures, didn't like what we heard, didn't like what we were hearing about how they didn't like school and so on and so forth. And so we decided, well, let's have a once a week college club kind of thing. What would have helped us when we were in college, right? I had graduated from college. My cousin had done a couple of years in college. And so we just set out on that. Had no intention of starting a nonprofit or anything like that. But after probably about a good 9 months, I had some flexibility in my work schedule at the time. She had some flexibility in her. She was actually, my cousin Jackie Cohen was a school bus driver. And so what we would do, we show up at the schools, we talk to counselors, we help parents through things. And we're like, wow, this is really needed in our community. We had kids who were doing well that they weren't getting any guidance, any counseling, so on and so forth. And so when we stepped out on this and we figured out, wow, this could be a nonprofit, and not really knowing what it means to be a nonprofit, right? I
Mm,
had tipped my toe into trying to start some businesses in the past and that kind of thing. But, the nonprofit world is just that. It's a business that doesn't make profit. It's the structure, everything is the same as running a business. And
mm,
so one of the things that we found immediately was that we needed to get training, we needed to talk to other professionals, and we need to hire professionals, right? So
mhm,
in the beginning, we had a bank account, and we had someone, a parent. All of our board, our so-called board or advisors that we put together were mostly parents.
mhm,
Many of them had different skills in different areas. One was actually an assistant bank manager, so she helped us set up a bank account without having a nonprofit number. And so, all we were doing was when we got money in from donations and that kind of thing, we weren't even an official nonprofit. Now, we weren't, this was 1999 that we started this organization, or at least the program 100% College Prep. And we called it 100% College Prep Club. And a lot of the kids back in the day that are alums now still call it the club. You guys are still at the club. And so long story short, we did that we ran the program as just a grassroots program for like 6 years before we actually became a nonprofit. Actually applied, got our number and all of that. But along that journey, what we realized is that we needed to learn about bookkeeping. We need to learn about how to keep records.
Mm-hmm.
We need to learn about, like, okay, what does it mean to have sign-in sheets and that kind of thing, and have proof of data and young people actually attending. When we started, we were still under this other organization. We asked them to allow us some funding to hire tutors. We still weren't getting paid. The majority of everybody was volunteering except the few tutors that we ended up hiring. And as we were moving along, we began to like, could we sit in on some of the meetings of your nonprofit organization just to see how those things are ran, and just kind of get a sense of that? What were they talking about? What, the finances, who were they getting finances from? What did that look like? And we started doing that, and just learning by being in the room, right? Um, and as we discovered and befriended folks in nonprofit, we began to ask questions. This was a time in the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of capacity building funding out there, right? So there wasn't a lot of funding out there where we could apply under another organization and get funding on board structure and how to set up a board, how to set up a nonprofit. Who are the professionals that you need to seek that that lend itself to the success in building a nonprofit. And so we really had to learn a lot of that on our own. There were some resources out there, some free resources, that we made sure we attended, where there were free workshops and those kind of things. There was this organization, they've changed their name and merged with some other organizations, called the Foundation Center. And the Foundation Center had a huge library of foundations across the nation. But they also, what we learned the most from the Foundation Center, which is now called Candid, what we learned from them was just attending those free workshops, what funders were looking for, what foundations were looking for. Again, there was not much capacity building money out there. The capacity building money was actually for well-established organizations already, had like at least $500,000 budget or more. Those were the folks that were getting some funding around capacity building. And so we sort of had to learn that, really on our own. But I think the most important thing that we did was to figure out how we could have professionals support our work. Sometimes they came in as volunteers. Most of the time they did. We found bookkeepers that were well versed in bookkeeping around nonprofit. A grant writer, even though we wrote a few grants in the beginning, we began to understand how important it is and how highly skilled a grant writer is, right? And so now we have a long time grant writer has been with us over 10 years, maybe close to 15 years now, that really knows our organization. But instead of paying ourselves, we still had jobs all at the same time. I'm working full time. My cousin was working full time. We weren't worried about paying ourselves in the beginning. we worried about paying the professionals, and we worried about to make sure that we were on solid footing,
Mhm.
and we worried about paying those who could directly support our students academically, right? And those are the two things that we really focused on. So the one thing that I would say is, if you can put the funding aside for professionals that can support and help you build your nonprofit, because at the end of the day, once you begin to write grants and those kind of things, those are there are things that you need to have in place once you become a nonprofit and begin to write grants for government and for foundations. Foundations a little more flexible, but definitely for government grants, there are certain things that you must have and must be in place in order to be successful in gaining those and being awarded those grants.
Right, right. No, that's good. That's good because I know that when we spoke before, that's one thing that you emphasized too, because we don't know how to do certain things when we're just starting. And, we can wing it, which a lot of us, I'm sure, do. We can also, again, maybe take some type of class, some type
Mhm.
of certification, maybe that can help us in that effort. But like you just mentioned, the importance of literally finding someone who would be willing to assist you in those beginning years. Uh,
Right. And what's really important, Jermaine, is that um, you know about bookkeeping, you know how to manage it, you know how to read certain documents and financial documents and those sort of things, but to actually have a professional do the actual work is so super important. I've run into so many folks who have and on the other side of that is that you want to be able to build the programs, right? So you're constantly built. That's what people usually get into nonprofit, because they love that side of the people side of it, right? Or
mm,
they love designing programs and creating those kind of things and finding solutions for folks in our community. And
mm,
so you can't do all of that and then try to be the bookkeeper and then try to be the grant writer, and then, try to know, all of the insurance papers. And, it's just, it becomes overwhelming, just like any business. You do have to teach yourselves what to look for, how to read those documents, and to make sure that, being able to manage that, but to have the professionals actually do the work is what's super and super important. And I've run into so many folks who have the passion for the work in the community and didn't keep up with all the paperwork, right? Didn't file a 990, didn't file all of the things that need to be filed. And then they find themselves in a position of, oh, someone is finally listening and I may be able to get this grant. But you find out all of your paperwork, your nonprofit number has been suspended, all of that. We've actually gone through that in
right.
a certain way. There was a year, one tax year. Oh, I'm sorry, the telephone. Um, we had one tax year, and I apologize for that. Forgot to turn that off. We have one year where somehow the feds didn't get our taxes, didn't get our 990s. And the only reason why they gave us a break is because we had filed consistently on time
Mm,
prior to that. And we had several, at least 2 or 3 years after that we had filed. But that one year, somehow we didn't get the paperwork that it wasn't filed or whatever. We had all the documents, right?
mm,
And they helped us out. We got to them. We were like, listen, we got $100,000 coming from the city. We need your support. We need your help. We got to get this done today. And we went to the IRS and they were like, you guys have been excellent up until now. So we know that something happened this year, right? That's the kind of, you don't want to You just don't want to mess up your nonprofit number. You don't want to be in that position, because as soon as that happens, then the opportunity comes that you can take advantage of, and there you are with your, your nonprofit status, um
Right.
kind of in the trash for a minute, until you can fix that. So yeah, always hire the professionals if you can.
Right. And even what you brought up in that example is different too, because again, having the assistance of someone who's professional, it still didn't mean that everything went smoothly. What it sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that things were filed, but
Mhm.
on the IRS's end, something wasn't taken care of necessarily.
Yeah.
And then it puts you guys in a situation.
Mhm.
So, is that what happened? And did they take ownership of that? And
Well, in actuality, they said they never got the documents, period. They
yeah.
had no record of any of our filing for that year. And so when we talked, and the city, and actually we're going after a city grant, and the city discovered it. They did their due diligence, and looking up all of our documents, making sure that our status was where it should be, and all of that. And they came back and said, "Hey, this is what we found," and we're like, "What?" And so luckily we had our files. All we did was put stuff in binders by the year. Very simple.
Mhm.
Our bookkeeper said this is what should do, file your stuff by year. All you got to do is pull it off the shelf. And pretty much that's what we did. We pulled it off the shelves, and we had everything that we needed, and we just dragged it, with us. We had to go all the way to Sacramento, I think it was. And they said they had never received the filing, and they said they had sent notices and everything, and we don't recall getting any of the notices. We had some problems with at that time with mail going to another nonprofit that was across the street. They would always get our mail. So but they would always give us our mail most of the time. But in any event, they said they had not received the filing at all. And so, we couldn't hold them accountable. But, again, because we had been very good at our filings prior and after this 1 year, they got a manager out, and they were able to take care of us like ASAP. And we were able to leave that office with the paperwork we needed to say it had all been reversed. Because we had no idea. So yeah, that's definitely an example of just, once you go out. And what I really suggest when I look at it at hindsight, and I think we did a little bit of this in the beginning, while you're building your nonprofit and all your programs, and you're doing your program design and outreach in the community and all of that, is to really go under a fiscal sponsor. And in the beginning, have an agreement with the fiscal sponsor that you would like to sit in on board. You want to learn from that organization, and be in a position to be able to attend certain meetings, whether it's a finance meetings or board meetings or budget meetings, and team meetings, being able to sit in the room and just see how those things are set up, meet with the accountants that the fiscal sponsor may have, and have that agreement up front, and learn from that while you're building your programs.
Right.
Yes, you do have to provide a percentage of everything that you bring in to the administration of that organization. And I think some people get caught in that. Gosh, I got to give them 10%. And I got to give them 15%, and that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to learn. It gives you time to build again your programs and all of that, and then be in a position to learn from that fiscal sponsor. And it just interview a number of fiscal sponsors, large, small, and see where you fit in. And just set up your goal of doing that for 2, 3, 4 years, and then be in a position to step out on your own. But yeah, that's one of the that's an advice that I would give is possibly when you're first starting out. It's because you might get into you might get into working your programs and all that and find out maybe this is not exactly where I want to be. Maybe it's something else first, and we'll come back to that. But it allows you that flexibility
Right.
before you apply for your nonprofit status.
Right, right. And I'm glad you mentioned that because honestly, I wasn't really privy of that until I started working with folks in the program and recognizing how, one, how many people were depending on YCD for that.
Mhm.
And then two, how many, whether it's nonprofits or businesses around the city were giving people those opportunities as well. And how it, took off that burden of having to figure out this whole piece of, keeping all this information and then making sure that this money went here and so forth. Having that assistance, not only was crucial, but definitely helped them to, like you were mentioned before, focus on the program, focus
Mhm.
on their clients, focus on the customers. And so that's definitely really important. And so, even in terms of that, was finding a fiscal sponsor, was it easy? Is that a simple process? What are your thoughts on that?
So what we did as we ventured out into the nonprofit world, we came up with this name that you mentioned in my bio, Bayview Association for Youth. And so what we did was we enlisted again. We didn't have capacity building funding and that kind of thing. So we enlisted others in the nonprofit world that we knew, and they gave us some advice. We were known in the community as 100% College Prep Club, and they said, well, maybe you want to, have a general name. We had dabbled into having basketball teams and some other stuff, and even though 100% was like the most popular and probably the strongest program that we had, just the umbrella name of Bayview Association for Youth allowed us to move in any direction, in youth services.
Right.
Instead of just having 100% college prep and everybody just looking at us for that, which is now thinking through it, I don't know if that was a smart idea. But we had Bayview Association for Youth was the nonprofit, and 100% was the program under Bayview Association for Youth. So
Mm,
what we found ourselves in once we gained our nonprofit, so we started in 1999. By 2005, we had applied for and were awarded our nonprofit status. We didn't get our first actual grant, and it was a city grant until 2007. And so, probably between 2007 and 2012, we had a growth, and we still had a small budget, maybe 250,000 or so. But we found ourselves as we grew and began to hire staff, we found ourselves cash poor,
mm,
right? Because the larger grants that we had were city grants. City grants don't cut you a check, when you're awarded. It's
mhm,
a reimbursement process, right?
mhm.
So you pay, and maybe, within 30 days, hopefully, you get a check back from what you paid for, right? In
Mhm.
the meantime, you're still doing other payrolls before you get, you had a payroll in May, early May, two payrolls in May, and
Right.
you might not get a check until almost the end of the next month in June. Well, you've had two more payrolls since then. So now you have four payrolls that are outstanding, right? And so you actually need money in the bank.
Right.
So 100% began to really, really grow. And we found it tough making payroll,
Mhm.
right? I was paying myself a little bit of nothing. I was getting a little bit of retirement from the city and just making it work, and putting more of the monies that we were getting towards staffing and other things that supported the program. And so we said, should 100%, we got to the point in 2017, we said, should 100% move under a nonprofit? Bayview Association for Youth is still there, but it just did not have the capacity or the money in the bank to really hold us. And let me just go back a little bit. In 2011, 100% was deeded a piece of property. So we were in this building that historically a couple of floors have served the community, and we were deeded this piece of property, but we couldn't even borrow against it because we didn't have any money in the bank, and a lot of work needed to be done, and we did a lot of stuff in the building. And Bayview Association for Youth still owns the building; it's still 100% home. So yeah, to finish this story, in 2017 we applied for more city grants, and we got them. So in 20 from 2018, June 30th, 2018 to July 1st, leaving one fiscal year, going into a new fiscal year, we had increased by over $500,000, mostly city money. And so we had to make a decision that Bayview Association for Youth did not have enough money in the bank to support that growth. And so what we started doing is we wanted to interview fiscal sponsors. We wanted to go under a Black led organization that was able to hold 100% college prep, the program. And so what we did, there were some capacity building opportunities that came up, and we took advantage of those. Some of them came with a little money, like somewhere between $10,000 $15,000, and we began to go out and attend workshops around. Attended one workshop where nonprofits were merging, just to see what that was really about. And it was, those type of workshops that were like, okay, now we kind of know what we should look for. Um, let's go out and interview. And we interviewed 3 organizations, and almost went with one of the organizations in their leadership. They had some changes in leadership, and it just caused some things to happen. And so we ended up not going with them. And so now we're under Young Community Developers. So and we've grown from that time of having maybe close to an $800,000 budget in 2018 to this past year. We had 2 point almost, well, we were just approaching 3 million. And so again, some of that is foundation money, but still the foundation money is a much smaller amount. We would love for that, for the pie to really look even with government grants and corporate grants and donations and foundations. And something else we could talk about, we may be able to hit at today as well. That's what we would like to see. But right now, we have probably 65 to 70% of our funding, or maybe more actually, almost, yeah. Well, no, but around that, probably about 60 to 70% is government.
Mhm.
And we would really like to have more and more, foundation, the folks who cut checks and, yeah,
Right.
that kind of thing. But so that's how we got to the nonprofit. And what we looked for in a fiscal sponsor
Mhm.
is how they were set up. We looked at their finances as well, right? What kind of funds were they getting in, and would they be able to support us and what we wanted to do? Meaning, that they needed to be able to pay out money and wait to get reimbursed as well.
Mhm.
Um, we wanted an opportunity where it was a community of learning. So at YCD, they had a leadership team, for example, that I was a part of. Because what I found myself when I left the city and I came to 100%, the first thing that I didn't realize is that I was by myself. I sat in this big building in the office and I was like, I don't have a team. I didn't really have because most of our staff was part time when I first left to do 100% of the time. And so what I found at YCD was, a group of like minded folks. I found a team of people I could bounce things off of. And that was super important for me as a leader.
Mm.
Not only that it supported the organization as we moved and grew, and financially supported us, but also my support as a leader was really important as well. Because believe it or not, even though we had that many years, in the game and all of that, it was really slow going for me as well as far as my personality. I'm really, it may not show, and people are always like, I'm really a shy person. So it's not, I'm not one of those people that just go out and just like call people like, yeah, well, this is what we do. And we're looking for funding and blah, blah. It wasn't. So it was really our reputation. People like, yeah, you guys should check out 100% or you should fund 100%. It was our first grant came from DCYF. And it was because I happened to be working for the Unified School District and my boss knew the director of DCYF.
Mm.
And that's how we got funded, and a lot of that has happened as well. Being in the room, being part of the conversations is so super, super important
Mm.
as you're building your nonprofit, right?
Right.
Many associations that you could join, um, DCYF, for example, if you're DCYF grantee, they have a number of workshops, free workshops. We were always a part of that. Anything that was free and that built upon um, my skill as a leader, my team, our program. We just took advantage of what was out there, and we were always at the table, and maybe sometimes we were quiet in the room, but as a leader, I just took in so much what other folks were doing, the ideas on the table. Did some of that work for us? Did it, maybe it doesn't work for us. How do we partner with other folks in the room, right? So all of those things help to support building your nonprofit as well, and building you as a leader or your team, and so yeah, those things were super important, all of that, in looking for a fiscal sponsor as well, right? Are you able, do they have an open door policy, that if you do have an issue, you know is the ED, the executive director, approachable,
Mm.
right? And being able to, hey, I have a problem that has nothing to do with them being a fiscal sponsor, but just you as a nonprofit leader, and being able to talk to that person and being able to find a solution or find a way to, or just a sounding board. Here's what I'm experiencing. Is this normal? Is this where we should be? That kind of thing. And so um I think finding a fiscal sponsor, take the time to do that, because they're different organizations have different
Right.
culture. And so, make sure that that culture fits for you, that their mission and their vision is aligned with yours. And then talk to some of the employees, that take somebody out to lunch. We did, when we looked for a fiscal sponsor, the three that I had chosen, and talked to the board and everything, and our board talked to one, met with a couple of the boards and everything, was folks I had already worked with that I respected. And so and I saw how they moved in spaces, and that's how I selected, them to interview. um and again, that they were black led organizations that understood the community, understood how we work and we need to move in the community. All of that was super important. Two of them were in Bayview and one of them were in the Fillmore, right? And so just being um, doing our due diligence of interviewing folks, taking folks out for coffee, and just like here's where we are, here's where we would like to be, and hey, we've done our research on what you all are doing, and have watched the work that you do. And how do you feel about taking on an organization such as ours, and be ready to open your books as well to a certain extent. um, so, especially when you get to that part where you get ready to sign on the dotted line, and make sure that the agreements are clear, of what the expectations are on both sides of the fence, right? So,
Right. So that's great. I mean, honestly, I've heard a little bit about not only just fiscal sponsorship, but also about maybe pursuing, and you again mentioned interviewing, but I think you definitely give more perspective on that whole process of really getting a good idea of who the fiscal sponsor is. Another interview we had, someone really spoke upon the importance of understanding, their goals and their mission and their vision before, if you will, knocking on the door and see what's
mhm,
possible. I know Candace had mentioned in her interview that she had a fiscal sponsor that was helping her before she got the 501c3 status. And when COVID 19 came, she got a windfall of fundraising, of funding, and it was too much for that nonprofit
mm,
for that
wow,
sponsor. And she said that she had to, one, look further into finding another one,
mhm,
but it also really pushed her to go, I also need to look into getting the 501c3,
mhm.
because now we're in a situation where we have more funding than they can handle. And in some respects, it just was unexpected as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This was going to come. It was like, grant after grant
Mhm,
started to open up for all of these efforts, to deal with COVID-19 in particular. But it also brings up the question of the fundraising prior to, right? Because you mentioned that you guys did have this budget of so many thousands of dollars before getting this fiscal sponsor. Uh, how were the fundraising efforts? I'm acknowledging that you guys were, taking money from whatever money you had at home,
mhm.
getting from the state for yourself. But the fundraising efforts, how did that go prior to getting the
Yeah, so the fundraising, there were two ways that we did that. One, um, our first grants actually came from the corporate world, and they were like, a lot of the corporations give like to the grassroots organizations anyway. They give like really small grants. They'll give like somewhere between $3,000 $10,000, right? But if you get, enough of those, you could actually put together a good $70,000, of funding, getting five here and 10 there, and so that was one of the strategies, and largely because someone who was a part of our organization, sort of as an advisor, kind of linked us to one corporate foundation, and we were able to get like about $10,000. I remember that first check; it was a $10,000 check, and I started crying. I think it was the first fund. Oh man, it was the first funding that we received. Other than that, our parents. Like I said, when we started, we really had advisors, what we called advisors, of parents. and our parents would lead us to certain things as well. Even their workplace oftentimes would give us, funding and those kind of things. We knew nothing about what it meant to go out and even ask for funding, right?
Right.
And and it's one of those things. If you grow up, like I grew up in a household, even though both my parents were young, when I was born, I grew up in a household where you didn't ask for anything. You worked for it all. So it was really hard to go out when you have this who you are around funding, and you just work for it. It's really hard to go out and even ask for money, right? And so we thought, who would give us money to do this, and who cares about our kids, right? And so, but we had to get over that. And so again, foundation money was the first. Corporate foundations were was the first monies that we actually received and started working on, and then partnerships. So one of the things that we did was partner with other organizations who were either more savvy than we were in getting money, or just had more long-standing relationships to get funding. And so one of them was, we have the Beacon centers here in the city that are at different schools, where the Beacon Center was just getting started in the early 2000s, and they were the ones that supported a lot of our work as well. They got the numbers, and we got the funding. And we didn't get direct funding. It was really indirect funding. They paid for tutors. They paid for our first historically Black college tour that we took in, actually, a year before we actually became officially 100%. And they paid for a number of our college tours after that. So we partnered with them, and we got funding from them. We partnered with two or three other nonprofit organizations. One was focused on youth leadership, and we brought the education component to what they were already doing, right? And so some of the grant we wrote grants together, and that's how we actually funded as well. We There were times that we got burned too from partners. One partnership actually wrote another grant and added us to it and did not tell us. We had no idea. And the how we found out was that the grantor contacted us and had a question, something about what we do or how we do something or whatever. And we're like, what are you talking about? Right. And so, we had to, that was something that we learned. And I have to say, that wasn't the only one. So, we had to kind of navigate our way through partnerships. And my cousin was really like, the partnerships are shut down. And today I'm still, um, partnerships are still very, very important to the work that we do, because one, we can't all be on our own corner doing our own thing. And even when college track came to town, and everybody said, oh, it's college track, and they got money from Steve Jobs' wife, and all of this big money coming through, and they found a location that they wanted. I went and did public comment that they should get the funding from the city to shore up this building for the work that they do. Because as far as I was concerned, they can't serve everybody in the community. We certainly couldn't serve everybody in the community. So how do we partner? The partnership never came about with College Track, because their model is so different than our model, and I have to say, a little bit less flexible. They have a specific way of doing things, and it really works. It just, the profile of young people that we work with, that doesn't work for us, so it was hard to partner. But long story short, we often felt like, okay, so maybe there are three other organizations in our community also doing college prep. How do we partner together to serve all of these students? Or how do we learn together to serve all of these students? So I never, even in being burned and being, backstabbing and that kind of thing that has happened over the years, it just made me sharper on making sure what agreements we have in place when we partner and those kind of things. But yeah, funding from um, partnering with other folks and corporate is really how we fund it 100%. And again, our family's raising money. We had a musical showcase that we did every year, kind of a Motown review. The last one was in 2019. Um, so we raised money through those efforts, fundraise raffles, however we could raise money, we did in the very beginning. And we also had memberships too. So our families paid a yearly membership of like $100 for the whole year. You get as much tutoring as you wanted, all of that. Sometimes it was a little hard to collect. And we had folks pay on time, $10 a month, whatever that looked like. It helped in fundraising, but we really wanted folks to have skin in the game as well, right? Really wanted them to say, parents would say, "You're going down there to 100% college prep because I paid my $100." You know what I'm saying? And so it was that kind of thing. But we really wanted our families to take ownership as well, and sometimes that could be volunteer, it could be through your pocket, whatever that looks like for you. And so those were ways that we raised money in the very beginning before we got that very first grant in 2007 from the city. Um, and yeah, and I think that there are the Bay Area and particularly San Francisco. We just have so much wealth around foundations. We're just blessed. We're actually really blessed here, and sometimes it can be very difficult to navigate that. And really, I hear people over and over again. I've applied for years with DCYF or MOHCD or OEWD, and I've never gotten any money. I think it took us a while as well, but I was always at the meetings, in the room, you know, even if I'm just introducing myself. I may not have anything else to say but to learn from what's going on and understand the inner workings, and all they would hear is Diane Gray, 100% college prep, you know. But I would try to attend as many meetings as I could and just like, again, like, yes, you're going to see my face. You're going to eventually ask me what I do. I'm going to eventually have an opportunity to share what I do. And, before you know it, you know, other folks start talking about you, other folks start saying, hey, yeah, there's this program, blah, 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 blah. And so that's how I think that's how we build. And you have to be patient.
Right.
You gotta keep going. You gotta keep
I want
going.
to stop you just for a second because I just want to say that's what I was thinking about, not only in the last conversation I was having, but during this conversation too, right? Because it wasn't, starting in 99 and then 2003, it was on, like, and then it wasn't popping in 2007 the way that it was in 2013. But it wasn't like you guys were like, we're just listen, man, it ain't what we thought it was gonna be, and it's not fast enough. Let's do something else. I feel like you guys kept the patience, but definitely be patient. What yeah, just please elaborate on patience because that's what I'm thinking.
It's so funny because when I left the city and I left a really good paying job and I went, I was making like probably maybe 50% of my salary. Um, but I knew that 100% was really making a difference in the community. And we just I had to buy the time because I really wanted 100% to live on, right? I wanted to live on beyond Diane. And right now I'm trying to get out the way and cultivate that next team of leaders to really take this on, right?
Mhm.
So in doing that, um, we just had to be patient, right? I had to make sure that the right people were, it's one of those things, are the right people in the right seat on the right bus, right? And so it cultivating or pulling together the professional folks to help with that foundation. One of the things that I really looked at was a grant writer, right? And so, and cultivating that relationship and looking at their successful um, grants that they had written for others and those kind of things. I had to be patient that having that key person in place, or for any other nonprofit that actually the leader has that skill, right? I still went to, even though I didn't feel like I had the skill that it takes to write grants, I've always been a collaborator on the grants. I look up the quotes. I put things in place. No, this doesn't fit here, that fits here. And that's by me going to workshops that focused on grant writing, right?
Mhm.
So when and I'm saying all this to say, it's all the little baby steps, of learning to get to the point of when you recognize what's real good and what's going to move forward as far as writing grants and getting those monies and being in the spaces. So all of those little things, it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's so worth it, right? It's so worth it because we're in this work not to make money. Although we want a good salary, we want to be able to take care of ourselves, we want to be able to have a home and support our families, but it's those little baby steps, that patience that you have to have. And we celebrated all those little awards along the way, that little $10,000, that $5,000, and so on and so forth. And just again, being in the spaces, finding ourselves um, in this particular space, in that particular space, and understanding what it means to apply for grants. Who should we talk to? How does that work? Um, and really making sure, one of the things that today that I think is what folks see is and we didn't have this years ago, of course, is our social media presence. People, pictures, what did they say? Pictures tell 1,000 words.
Mhm.
Pictures tell a story, right? And people see certain things, and so that's one of the things that we always, if there was an opportunity to table at events, we took those opportunities to table at events. We always had pictures. We also, we always blew those things up. So it was all those little steps um, that bring us to today,
Mhm.
right? Somebody else, maybe they started off the same time that we did, and they're a $10 million organization today.
Mhm.
That's not who we are. And but some people have that skill set and that level to do that. But sometimes with the grassroots organizations and the work that we do on the front lines, it's harder for those folks who are given money to understand what you do, unless you're in those spaces where you can share that, right? And being and I joined like different committees and did work on the committees and those kind of things, and all of that, so that it helped get the name of 100% out. I'm sorry if you guys can hear that. Somebody is building in the yard behind us. So that patience and that just being involved in different spaces, um, it worked out for us. It really worked out for us. And like I said, there's so many grant awards that we received that we didn't even go after. Someone else recommended us. And before we knew it, a program officer from some foundation is calling us saying, "Hey, I understand you do blah, blah." They send us an email or something. And I have a meeting with them. And, we got $50,000 out of that. We got 125,000. One of the grants that we have right now is that we've had for, this is going on the fourth year, I think, is through San Francisco Foundation, of being the administrator of scholarships for young people who live in Hope SF sites. We didn't go after that money. Someone, I knew someone from past that worked for the San Francisco Foundation, but it was only because of the college and career work that we were doing in the community. Um, that they tapped us. And again, it's just about being in certain spaces, and me going to meetings and Hope SF and finding out what they do and, how they do things. And we ended up in Double Rock, Alice Griffith, and doing work there, and before you knew it, they tapped us to, and it's really money that's passed through, to young people through scholarships. But, not that much money is going in our pockets per se. We don't get a position out of it. Um, but it's part of what we do. And it's part of building our organization and getting our name out there. So we took on something that maybe it's going to take a few years before it actually benefits. But what has happened is that we've done so well with that other folks from San Francisco Foundation that have the foundation administer their money and looking for organizations that donate to, our name can come up, and our name has come up, right? And so it's those kind of things again, that we build on. We're still super, super small. Um, and hopefully someone else will come along and maybe they want to make it larger, make it a bigger organization. But I'm really proud of the work that we do. And it just went a little slow, maybe when somebody else looks at it like, it took you guys that long to get to $3 million. Um, but I think in our grassroots work, um, I think our families and our community really appreciate what we do and how we work, with the community, and that's been super important. Sometimes when you grow really large, sometimes it's hard to give that personal touch, and that was super important to us. Is that we work with people, we work with families and young people one on one, and that we can reach out and touch them. They can reach out and touch us. And there's not this other layer of something that you have to go through before you get services for your children. And I'm not knocking any other organization that's huge, large organizations or anything like that. Everyone has their place, in this work. But I'm just saying that for 100% college prep, we wanted to really, for me, and it's probably my philosophy of staying somewhat small so that we could really be on the front lines, on the block, right? And we wanted to continue to do it in that way. And like I said, I'm hoping that the next team of leaders, take it to, much higher and to the next level, and but yeah, that's how we try to work it out, and just have that. It in the beginning it could be slow going because you hear about everyone else getting this much money from this government agency, and this much money from that, and this and that. And you just have to be patient in that, and make sure that you're meeting the right people, and they know about the work that you do, and really be focused. One of the things that we made sure of is that we stayed in our lane. I remember, like, in the early 2000s, there was a lot of funding came out around violence prevention. I see that coming again, violence prevention and young people, right? And my cousin was like, let's go after that money, you know. I was like, we don't do violence prevention. Now, you could look at education as violence prevention, you know, but
Right.
you can kind of make it fit. But I was like, no, they're talking about other organizations that are actually working with a certain profile young person who are, you know, juvenile justice involved or have been involved and you know, involved in other things on the block trying to. That's not what we do. And
Mhm.
there was a lot of money flying out of City Hall around this, but we were like, no. I was like, we got to stay in our lane. That's funding for some other organizations. That's not what we do, you know. And so, you know, um be cognizant of all of that and be careful not to just like, oh, well, there's money for STEM. You guys do education. Yeah, but we don't do STEM. You know, that's not really what we do. And
Mhm.
so, you know, going after just money and then finding out you got to do all these different programs and create all the, it's just, it can be a lot. You know, we got funding recently to do campaign around low or free tuition, college tuition. Now that's kind of in our wheelhouse, right? But still, we got to create a whole new program around a campaign, you know, from Youth Voice. Um, there are other campaigns out there. We're going to hitch our cart to all of that, but it does take a lot of work, you know, to do that when you're taking on funding, and it could be a new initiative, or you know, just make sure that you're just not applying for funding because the money is there. You know, make sure that it's within your mission and your vision, and yeah, and that you can really do what they're asking you to do, right? And you have the team to do that, or you can hire the team to do that. So,
Right. Right. No, again, that's good information. It's something that honestly I've heard a few times. You know, I remember Mr. Waters talked to us about that and share that about the importance of knowing. He emphasized our why, but again, that definitely is connected to mission,
mhm.
vision. Even the marketing team emphasizes knowing exactly who our audience is and who exactly where we our targets are and why we're going after that particular population. Because just like you mentioned, yes, we don't want them to be caught up on the streets. But if we start going in this direction, again, that's going to pull us into, having to, like you not only mentioned, having to build a program, but that's another set of staff members with a different type of skill set. And so now the folks that you have, either have to develop certain skills or they become a little bit, on shaky ground because they're not also like, helping folks who are out there in difficult situations.
Right, right. You
And
want to be able to do good work, you know, and if you pull yourself in too many directions running after the money, you could do just as you said, you know, you wear your staff out if you expect your same staff to take on additional work, or you have to, you know, hire and build the capacity of someone else, you know, or whatever that is. And it could definitely be a lot because you're actually trying to you're still in a building phase, right? And so to go after just, you know, write grants because the money is there, it
Mhm.
could be very taxing on what you're trying to do, you know. And so you just have to be careful um, to make sure that you don't find yourself stuck and then you get a bad reputation of not, you know, actually doing the work, or you're not doing it well, and you know, so on and so forth. So you don't want that as well. So, and we just try to focus on what we do and build that and do it well. And I think that has served us well. Absolutely.
Right, right. That's really good right there. Doing what you do well.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that you brought up and is the meetings. in the last conversation that we had, we did talk about networking. We did talk about the importance of social media. We did talk about the importance of being out there, even like you just mentioned, tabling at different events. But when it comes to the meetings, that isn't something that we touched on. What are the types of meetings that we should look to be a part of, by some means join, um, so that we can get into, like you just said, the room?
Yeah, so one thing that we did was we looked for either new initiatives through the city, through the school district that aligned with the work that we were doing. Um, for example, if you work with young people, some of the different commission meetings you can learn a lot from, like the Juvenile Justice Commission meeting. Um, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of conversations. You hear about other people who are in the room or speak. And oftentimes I would just be in the room and I was like, oh, they do blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's something that I would like to talk to them about, or maybe that's something that we could partner. And so it was commission meetings, it was community meetings. I remember one of the meetings when Obama came up with his My Brother's Keeper. And so, all around the country, particularly in large urban cities, folks start building, My Brother's Keepers programs. There was going to be funding out. And so the city did the same thing. They added sisters to it. So it was My Brother's, My Sister's Keeper. And so I saw a flyer or something, or received the email that someone forwarded to. Oh, that's the other thing too. Get on as many, sometimes it's overwhelming in my email, but I'm on a number of different community lists and listservs, because you get a lot of information through that, a lot of workshops and meetings and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of community things. So I do that. So I had started with going to those My Brother, My Sister keeper meetings, and just started meeting people there, right? And as at first they just had a big room, meeting of nonprofits, school district, folks from the mayor's office, and different city departments. But one of my partners that we use today, this program called You Aspire, and what they do is financial aid around college. I do train, my staff take training from them now. We just finished like a 5 series training on financial aid and how to work with our youth and how to work with families. And I found them years ago, and started, we're actually, the first thing we did with them was a partnership between College Track 100% and San Francisco Achievers, and we did a financial aid Saturday, and we did it through You Aspire, and I met them at My Brother's, My Sister's Keeper meetings that we all attended. And so it's been those type of community meetings that we looked for, initiatives that the mayor's office was doing. And we just started attending those meetings and being in the room, hearing what was going on. Oftentimes you hear about grants that are coming down through certain initiatives. You have the opportunity to talk to other folks and network with folks in the room. And so those are some of the things that we did in the beginning. Also with the San Francisco Unified School District, there were a number of committees that they recruited families and other nonprofit partners to attend. We would be a part of that. We would be part of the conversations around budgeting and all of that. And so, and particularly, we looked for, and not just like a general budget meeting, but we looked at agendas and said, okay, they're talking about after school programs, right? And so we know that that's the work that we do. So we made sure that we were at that meeting to talk about after school programs, right? Be it after school programs at a school site or bridging, um, building a bridge from the school site to the community, right? Um, so that and other things that we did was even parent groups, right? That brought parents together from around the city. We were a part of those and had conversations. And we sent some of our parents to those meetings and have them come back and report, and so we just tried to be in those spaces that, again, as we stayed in our lane and we focused on education and college and career and after school academic programs. That's basically how we really did it. We even attended meetings in other cities. We went to Berkeley. We went to Santa Clara one time and attended a meeting that was just like really open, not just for residents of that city, right? And it was really open. Some of the resources, like I mentioned early, the Foundation Center, now called Candid, and Compass Point. We went to those things, and you would be surprised once you get on their listserv how many things are sent to you that are free and open to the entire community that happens around the Bay Area. It's a lot of information. Some of it can be overwhelming, but there's just that one or two or three or four times that you're like, yeah, I'm going to go to that. And you learn, and you just by being in the room, you network, right? And so that's how we really got um, connected in so many ways, again, with partnerships, with opportunities to apply for grants, um, just by being in the room and just by sometime doing a little work on a committee, or lending our voice to something, an initiative, or something that is being created, or just being part of a focus group. We just did all of that. Um and again, that's some great, it's one of those. It worked for me because, again, being kind of a shy person and not like really a networker per se, just by being in a room and having the opportunity to talk and say what we, in breakout sessions and all that kind of stuff, it just really worked. It worked for me as a leader, and it worked for, I think it worked for our organization.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, again, what we had covered was being at the events, being at, what's coming to my mind is like the fun stuff, right? Like,
Mhm,
for instance, the parade that just
mhm,
happened,
mhm,
all the Juneteenth things,
mhm,
being visible at those things. But then you're mentioning the importance of the meeting, right? The things that you find in the email, like, we probably have signed up for, but then we don't check them all because they're not the most the pertinent things that we may say
mhm,
have to do, but it's something that we get to do, like you just
mhm,
said, we do if we are part of those lists. But with that being said, the question that I have had for some time too, for instance, is we do get um, the flyers usually once everything is already set. The table's already set. Who's at the event?
mhm.
Is already going to be there. They already got the vendors. They already got the nonprofit organizations. How do we find ourselves getting the email when they're planning to have, for instance, the carnival in,
Mhm,
uh, I don't know how many months in advance they
mhm,
start sending that out, but how do we find ourselves being on those lists so that we go, okay, let's get a table. Let's make sure that we do show up to that. Um,
mhm.
signed up, however much it costs, however much space that we need, we have, whatever, so that we can be part of it versus just spectating.
Yeah. So that is a really good question. One of the ways is, once you attend those events, find out, is there a committee that were part of the planning and those kind of things, and just start talking to people and finding out, like, who really put this together. Is it a nonprofit? And contact those folks and again have a conversation around we would have loved to have been a part of it, and here's some ideas that we have. One situation that I had very recently had to do with the school district, and they have a college, and in their central office they have a department of college and career, and so they sent out the save the date, and their save the date was a good 4 months when I finally saw it or received it, 4 or 5 months before the event, at least 4 months, I think it was. And so they talked about bringing together high school counselors and those organizations that partner with the high schools, bringing them together to convene in sort of yeah, like a convening, bringing them all together to plan for their school sites and learn together. So in the information they sent out, they talked about Black and Brown students, right? But all the partners, none of them narrowly worked with Black students like 100%.
Mhm.
There were other organizations, other college access programs that work with all kids, um, but none of them narrowly did the work that 100% does. So I immediately got like, well, and so when I looked at the registration, they had our name in the registration. You could check off, are you a member, are you a member of any of these organizations? They had our name there, but we weren't part of the planning. So of course, immediately I got angry, called up one of our other partners because his organization's name was there as well. And I was like, beside myself. So I said, well, I'm not going. And how dare they. But then I had to sit with that for a few days and not be angry about it. Right. And like, okay, I could go on the whole social justice tip, give them a piece of my mind, blah, blah, blah. But what I decided to do, I emailed the lead in that particular event, and I was like, I wasn't indignant about it or anything like that. I just went in and said, we narrowly work with African American students. We must be a part of this planning. We should be a part of this planning. And immediately, she kind of turned red. She got, she understood and, oh yes, yes, yes. So, kind of be careful what you ask for. But but anyway, I became, part of the planning. I had coaches at a couple of the schools, three schools actually, three of the high schools, and we became part of the planning and instrumental in the planning. I came up with ideas. I ended up facilitating one of the schools, um, a follow up, some follow up work. I ended up facilitating one of the schools meetings where they were bringing everybody together and help them brainstorm some things of what they're going to do in the next school year and that kind of thing. So I could have given them, I could have slammed them. I really could have slammed them. How dare you talk about Black and Brown students and you have the nerve to have our name in the registration, but not contact us and say, then I had to look at ourselves and I had to say, was there something that, not that we didn't do, but was I not in the right space to make that happen? And not so much that I was looking at something that we had done wrong, because they definitely were wrong, right? And I kind of, in so many words, told them that they were, and again, had to stick my foot in the door. Um, but then, at the same time, what could I learn from that? So that's the one thing that any situation, whether um it's from our perspective, somebody else's perspective, what did I learn from that? And I could have really like came with the, angry black woman, face, and like, how dare you not invite us to this planning. But at the end of the day, I had to show, which, black folks always have to do. We have to work harder. We have to show that we're supposed to be a part, and blah blah blah. But being in that space, I also learned how to um, build out one of these convenings as well.
Mhm.
And so I put myself in a position to learn, and I put myself in a position, or this organization, I should say, I put us in a position to learn, for them to understand how valuable our work is, and how you just don't dismiss part of our community, right? And they began to understand that, because then they said, well, who else is doing blah blah blah. And I linked them up. I was like, where's the Samoan community? How come they're not at this table? Right? Oh, do you have a contact with the, so I was able to like invite other folks who should have been at the table, you know um and so I had to look at it in a different way of, I'm a value in this organization, is valuable in this work, and we're not to be dismissed. And
Mhm.
I had to show them in so many ways. Now, should that have happened? No. And I could have, again, I could have come in with a whole different attitude about the whole situation, or I could have walked away, which was my initial reaction, was just to, well, y'all do y'all thing, because you don't know what you're doing working with our kids anyway. I could have taken that attitude. Um, and so, sometimes sometimes you have to play the game, and sometimes there have been situations where, I had to be that angry black woman, and like walk away from some situations, and it's a judgment call. It's a judgment call. And so, since we were already working in the district, that is what made me so much more angry, that you knew of us, but you didn't invite us to the party, right?
Mhm.
um or at least planning the party. So um it ended up working out. And some people was like, nah, it still could have worked out, and you could have slammed them, and but it was just my approach, and so we all have our approaches. But I think what I sat back with was, how does this benefit my community by me being in this space, by me being part of the planning team? How does it benefit my young people, black young people? And at the end of that, how does it benefit our organization to sit at this table? What else? Because we've gotten some calls already from the district around, can you come in and do this? Can you do that? Of course, there's always, we don't have a lot of money, but so that we've gotten calls, and we're able to like choose whether or not we want to step into that, you know. But again, it was part of this planning, being a part of this particular team, and making sure that it benefits our young people at the end of the day.
Right, right.
Mhm.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Again, like you just mentioned, the importance of not only knowing how you want to make that judgment call. It's sometimes it's a matter of standing up for yourself or standing up for your organization, and sometimes it's a matter of even using that. Um, in sometimes these ways where we go, well, because I feel offended, I feel like I should get this out of this
Mhm.
versus just, slamming the door, hanging up the phone, you know,
Mhm.
getting that. It's like, what can I get also by virtue of becoming perhaps more involved because I have been wronged in this type of way.
Right,
Um,
right.
and that's important too.
Yeah.
It's definitely yeah, it's something that we all have to kind of figure out. Who we want to connect with,
Mhm.
who building that connection could connect us to eventually too. So all those things come into play.
Yeah, yeah. It's super, super important because if an organization that you partner with does not have a good reputation, you can slide down that slippery slope right with them. If you're not, if you know that they do something like, yeah, I really want to attach myself, you have to be super, careful of partnerships as well, and what that all looks like. Because again, make sure that it's aligned with the work that you do, the way you want to be seen in the community, the way you want your community to access your services, and just love on our community. We just have to be super careful of who we partner with and how we move, in different spaces. So yeah, absolutely.
Right, right. Yeah, relationships, that definitely has come up in our
Mhm.
conversations. Getting out there helps us to understand, who really is, kind of like meant to be in our circle and who we want to be connected to. And then the more that you kind of see, okay, these are the people that I feel like are doing great work. What are other people's thoughts on them? You can ask
Mhm.
folks, what do you guys
Mhm.
think about this organization? What have you guys
Mhm.
heard? It's like, oh
Mhm.
man, you how much time you got?
Right, 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 right.
And sometimes it can be a really complicated thing,
Mhm.
but it's definitely, yeah, right along the lines of, being in certain rooms. You kind of get a gist of, who are some of the best folks doing that type of work, and who are the folks that have the great reputations that you want to be connected to. And then there's could be the folks who have maybe some um, gray in their reputation, but I could also understand, why they've made certain decisions or why they
Mhm.
didn't do what somebody else wanted them to do, and you could still find a way to, maybe maneuver that relationship.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's like you said, it's super important to interview partners and yeah, hear what other people are saying about that. I mean, oftentimes I chuck, what other people say to the back of my brain because, what one person's experience may not be your experience. But then at the same time, if you keep hearing some of the same things over and over from different people, you're like, oh, okay. But again, just make sure that alignment is there, with your missions, the work that you do in the community, how you can benefit each other, how you can support each other, um, how your staff may work with their staff, if that's what it's about as well. Um, and just how do you move together in the community? One of the our more recent partners has been, Us for Us with Uncle Damien,
Mhm.
and we actually, uh, with our HBCU tour that we did back in March. One of the things our young people had to do, being a part of, participating in that tour, was community service. And so we partner with Us for Us. We have been working, a little bit with Us for Us for, since the pandemic started, really. And so, we got our young people together and we went out, they made lunches, we went out in the community, and it was really excellent, and even though, they're all young people, um, I won't say the profile of young people are different, but we have some some edgier students that we gotta, keep pushing, keep hand holding, keeping them out of trouble. And I think he has some of those young people as well. But to have them all in the same room and working side by side, and they come from the same community. Some of the kids in our HBC that attend the HBCU live in different parts of the city, but just bringing all those young people together, it was great alignment. And I look forward to us doing more work together. Maybe even training our young people to, do workshops at their site and vice versa, that kind of thing. And so, even though the work that we're doing with young people is different, or we do it in different ways, we're still about their futures. We're still about making sure that they prepare to be, um, great adults and community members and that kind of thing. We're all still focused on that, right? And so, um, and all of that came from not us just bringing kids together, but us actually the adults having the conversation as well, and making sure that there is great alignment there and how we can work together. You do some of our activities, we do some of your activities, and just get all of those young people in the room together. I mean, one of the things at our school sites when we do groups, or we discuss with the school administrators about who we want to work with. We don't want to work with just all of the students who are doing well in school, and we don't want to work with the ones at the other end who are not doing well, that you having behavioral problems.
Mhm.
But we want to work with all students. We want to work with those in the middle. We want to work because when you gather them into one room, they can learn from each other, and they don't realize that, oh, the so-called nerd really likes this, and the one that's cutting up in school and causing the chaos, they like that, and we both like the same thing. You just, it's just major, and we've seen that over and over and over again, in the work that we do, just bringing young people together that would not, that would pass each other on the block, and so, I think it's the same thing with organizations as well. Um, just make sure that, because the adults can mess up everything. The adults can mess it all up, right? You get the young people be cool, and it be the adults that's messed up. So we want to make sure that we all can work together well as adults, that we know what we want to do, that we bring those young people in and let those young people really help to create that culture, right? And create that space that they want to be in as well. So we got to step back and let a little bit of that happen. But the initial conversation in the partnership is usually with, the adults that are running the organization. And I would say, don't shy away from that. Don't One thing for me, I never ever thought that I was always in competition with other organizations. There were times where we ran into things that, because we took kind of the philosophy that we're not going to pay kids for education. So we had other organizations paid their kids showed up, blah blah blah, whatever. We're like, nah, we're not going to pay you. You know, education is its, reward in itself, right? That's the attitude that we took. But then we had to realize some things as well. And we do some incentives, and we do some, awards to students and that kind of thing. But we do try to make sure that, our young people understand that the work that we hope that they do in the community and come back, it's not always tied to a dollar, or it's not always tied to a award or incentive or something like that. And so we, when we talk to other organizations, we make sure that that's kind of clear, because they may be paying their young people to show up for things, and that's cool. And we just want to make sure that things, because we have run into some things that have happened in partnerships, because it wasn't aligned, well, or we didn't get a true understanding before we embarked on an activity together or something like that. So we never, looked at, we're in competition because we do some of the same work, and that kind of thing. at the end of the day, we, again, I said this earlier, we can't all serve all of the young people and families in our community, and nor can you. But how do we, put the best together, our heads together, and the best work that we do to, make sure that it serves our community the way in which we want to serve them,
Right.
and whatever that is that we bring to the table. We need something from you, you need something from us. We can work well together. Um, and there was a time, some years ago, where there was a lot of partnership funding. The what was it called, collective impact. With partnership, folks coming together as partnership, and it was forced because there was money involved.
Uh,
There was money out there for collective impact projects, and people were trying to force themselves to work together because there was money. And it can't, and we were involved in one of those, and several organizations were asked to leave. Their head wasn't there, and it was forcing all of us to work together. And that's not what you want.
right.
You want to be able to have some synergy. You want to be able to work well together, and because at the end of the day, it's about support. Again, it's about supporting our community. If we can't do that well together, then we should not be partners,
Right.
period.
Right. Right. Cool. So we do have just a few minutes left. I did want to ask one question around. So it's I guess two parts. So one, getting getting the youth, getting their attention, gathering them by some means. Any tips on that? One other question that goes right alongside that is, there is a person that wants to start. Um, a basketball league for folks, and they need parents to also, and you even mentioned that too, like wanting the parents to like help out, do some volunteering. How did you guys get that opportunity, building that relationship with the parents and their children? But yeah, just basically the outreach portion. Any tips on that?
Yeah. So definitely, I'll start with the parent piece first. Um what we really did is, in the beginning, we just brought those parents together. We were volunteering with the girls group, and we were just like, we have to know who the parents are, right? And so we brought the parents together, and we talked about what we in the work, what we had discovered, and what we think, or how we should support our young people. But what we ended up doing is really having a conversation with those parents and saying, what have you found? What are your challenges? How can we support what you feel like you need more of, or you haven't gotten any, right? And so we kind of allowed our parents to be a part of the conversation around what 100% club should look like. What should a college club look like, right? And so, um, you have some parents that are very vocal. You have some parents that are less vocal. You have some parents that really wanted to just talk to you one on one, and not really be in a group kind of setting. So I think we were flexible in how parents came to us, and how we validated what they said, and, well, what is that, they come up with something, or maybe it's a little bit of a complaint about something that they've experienced. How would you have done that a little better? What do you think should happen? And so they're like, oh, well, with the basketball league, we definitely gotta, we could raise money through snacks. And how is that going to work? And it just kept asking questions, and allowed the parent to really come up with it. Well, I was thinking about, if you go to Costco and you get a box of blah, blah, blah. Well, who's going to pay for it? Well,
Right.
I'll be willing to pay for it, but then if we did, you know what I mean? And so it's just allowing them to be part of whatever part that they wanted to play. And what we have to realize is, one thing that I learned when I worked with the school district, they would always say, oh, well, parents, Black parents are not volunteering and blah, 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 or not enough of them are volunteering. If your part is to bring your child to school ready to learn, then that's your part. And we need to validate what parents' part, how they want to be involved. We need to engage them. Um, the other thing is when you work with their child and you love on their child, it's almost like you don't have to do anything else. Their child goes back and talk about you. you know,
Mhm.
Miss Diane, maybe she did blah 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 blah. So when you make that telephone call to your, oh, you Miss Diane. Oh yeah, Khalil talked about you. That kind of thing. That happened over and over and over again, especially with my cousin. I was kind of like the right brain person of putting things on paper and organizing, make sure we had templates and all this stuff. And my cousin was really the left brain. She was the relationship person, right? And that's something that you find in your organization as well, is like, how do you work together in your organization to be, everybody has their skill, everybody has their expertise. It's the same thing with our families. As you get to know them, you find out, we found, because we tried to run a basketball league as well before we started 100%, and we did. And so we got parents involved, we raised money, we let them come up with the ideas of how we could raise money, and you would be surprised at some of the phenomenal stuff that comes up through ideas from parents. We used to do this Black Man Can Cook event that was a fundraiser for 100%. Came from one of our parents. He
Mhm.
got all these brothers together that he knew that could cook. We got the opera house, and all the men had their tables. They had cooked all their foods. You bought certain tickets and you go around. You could get a dessert ticket and this ticket, and you go around and you give them your ticket and you get their dish.
Right.
And it came through a parent, and it was really successful. And we I think we did like 3 times, and we actually raised money from it. We
Right.
actually would raise, between 350, maybe 550 was the. But the point of the matter is, it was something that the parents, um they just they just were so happy that was something that they could give back to, that they organized, that was fun. And and those are the kind of things that we created that space for that to happen. you
Right.
know we have parent meetings, and yeah, we would get upset because we thought 15 or 20 parents were going to show up, and we prepared for that, and like 5 showed up,
Mhm.
right? But then we talked to parents like, okay, how can we get the rest of them here? Can you make calls? Can so and so and so make calls? Can yeah, but so and so so works at night. Okay, so then we need to call her during the day. And maybe she can't come to a meeting, but she can have her voice, or he can have his voice. And so we were flexible in that way, and just it's not just a meeting, but it's other ways to engage our families, right? And maybe they're not going to come to a meeting. So how do we do the engagement after that? And we just became creative as some of the things that we did, and with parents, and we allowed parents to do. And so, and having the right people on your team, that are, our people, they respond to relationships, and they respond to love like anybody else. When you care about their child, they will do anything for you because you care about their children,
Mhm.
right? And so I tried to have the right people on my team, um to make sure that not only do we work with the young people, but we also work with families, whoever the families are, whether it's a grandparent or an auntie, that's raising a child, whatever, whatever that those family, whoever those family members are, we make sure that they have an opportunity to be a part and voice their opinions as well. I think we've had, especially, I think just before the pandemic and then during the pandemic, we it was kind of, it seemed so isolating that it seemed like less and less of having conversations with parents like we have, that we had in the past. But we're definitely building up to that again, and it takes a little time, to do those kind of things. And you know, but again, when you work with their children, and you have to ask, we think that often parents will see something like, well, they know that they should be over here doing blah, blah, blah. They know that we need to raise $1,500. They know we have to ask them as well. Hey, how can you be involved in us raising this $1,500? You got any links to anything? You got any contacts? Whatever that is. And you would be surprised. Because I like to say, really, our community and our parents, they were the ones that built 100%. They
Mm-hmm.
were the ones that came to us and say, this is what my child needs. This is what's happening. This is what's not happening. This is what I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really our first board. And they were the ones that advised us on how we need, how things could happen, and, how we could set this up, or how we could do this, or what about this idea. They were really the ones that, in our first 5 years really built 100%.
Right, right. No, that's good news. And again, I'm sure that they can benefit greatly from that, because that is an important piece to it all, especially because there's only so much that you can do, um, without the assistance of the volunteers.
Mhm.
So, definitely getting that type of assistance will go a long way. Um, but yeah, we're actually at 12, and so I did want them to just to know again how they can get a hold of your organization. Website, any social media handles.
Mhm.
Great.
Absolutely. Definitely 100% collegeprep.org is our website. Um, we'll be posting some things up very soon. We're just getting to the end of the year. We already have our flyer ready for our next HBCU tour in 2024. We'll be visiting colleges in Atlanta, Tennessee, and Alabama. We do different regions of the South. So this year was, where did we go? Oh, yeah, we went Southeast. Yeah, Southeast, we did Virginia, Maryland, and DC. And so, yeah, next year will be in the Atlanta area. Um, so we'll have that up soon. Yeah, so 100% college prep 100 collegeprep.org. And I can put that in the chat as well. And then I'll also put my information in the chat. Um, and folks can contact me directly. That's our website. And then definitely contact me as well. And would love to, anyone that is, um, thinking of starting a nonprofit, or, whatever. I'm not saying that, we're experts on that. All I know is the experience that we went through. And yeah, I would be happy to have a conversation with folks of how, we moved the way we moved. And, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. No, that sounds good. And then for what is that for Instagram? Is it just 100 college
Oh,
prep?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's at 100 100 college prep is our Instagram. Did I spell that right? Yeah, I spelled it right. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, no, that's great. Again, we definitely appreciate you showing up. Again, one of the biggest pushes that we wanted to make was for the folks who again started it up.
Mhm.
It's hard to find those folks. Yeah, again, one who did it. And again, sometimes it's a shorter stretch, and like you just mentioned, you could have a huge budget in a number of years,
Mhm.
and sometimes it takes longer. But again, I think that just expressing that journey is important because people can feel like, well, maybe it's not successful because it didn't do this in
Yeah.
this amount of time. And so it's definitely a great story and testament of patience, of consistency, figuring
Mhm.
it out one step at a time.
One step at a time. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you again, and
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. We'll be in touch.
Okay. All
All right.
right, folks. Have a
All
good day. All right. Bye-bye.
right. Awesome. Awesome. And so, honestly, what I'll do, I'll talk just for a second because we're still here. I know Alkeisha's on. If you want to chime in at all, Alkeisha, you can. Um, but definitely wanted to just take that second to just acknowledge what was just spoken about. Honestly, she touched on so many things. I not only feel like it'll be important to go back and to kind of break things up and get an idea of the different subject matters, but also the great advice that was brought up around those things, because it is something that, and this is why I do this, because sometimes you'll get something that you weren't expecting. She said some things about the partnerships, about getting a fiscal sponsor, about fundraising that honestly we hadn't heard yet. And we've heard some good things, and I definitely intend to bring in some more folks to drop some more gems and give us some more great information. But some of these things are just so good, and I'm even thinking about the same conversation being said about our conversation with Terry. Right? It's just like, oh man, 3 or 4 things that no one else has mentioned are now here, and we have to, by some means, put something into action, right? The reality is if we put something into action, if we put something into action around every point, then we probably find ourselves overwhelmed and we can't follow through with a number of the things that were brought up. But if we can take one thing, and we say, you know what, this is um, easy to do because I'm already doing something like that, then I can put more energy into this area and see some more results given what I just learned about that today. She was one of the people that emphasized to us the importance of social media again. She said, some grants um, we got access to because of social media. We didn't know these people. These people didn't really know us. We didn't apply, but we got a call. We got called about someone else who mentioned our name in the room that we weren't in. And next thing you know, a grant is being given to our organization. And so social media is one of those things that she even emphasized wasn't here in 2000 when they first started, in 1999 when they first started. So it's an opportunity that we can take advantage of, get a lot of results out of. But in the meantime, learning to become more familiar with the technology and where it's going. Developing like some means relationship with the newest thing on TikTok. But even again, using Instagram, using Facebook to our advantage would be something that can allow us to get potentially more funding, more people show up to our events. But even she mentioned the importance of going to meetings. And like I said, no one's mentioned meetings. We've talked about events, but we haven't talked about, hey, they're doing this thing at this facility. It's going to be, someone's going to be talking from the commission on this particular board and this particular subject matter. And that would be uh, honestly, it doesn't sound particularly fun, if I'm honest, right? Not particularly fun, but you never know who's going to be in the room. And sometimes you just want to be in the room that you become familiar, not only with the certain people and they become familiar with you, but you're also starting to hear, oh, I didn't know this about our sector. this is what's really been working in these different organizations. This has really been working for these folks. Maybe we can do something like that. Maybe we can connect with the folks it's working for and get some training or assistance around this particular thing that we're working on. And so it is, again, why we do it this way. I would love, and people have come in and we've had presentations and they go, I'm going to talk to them about this. And I like it. I like it. I like it. But because when we have these interviews, they can talk about 7 different topics, 10 different topics, and give us information that we're not aware of or haven't tried before. That's why we go, let's just leave it open. We're going to see where the conversation goes. If they have conversation questions, they can put it in the chat. If I have a question, I'll ask it. But at the end of the day, I think that these types of conversations are going to be continue to deliver. And so I hope that you guys not only got something out of it. Please, I already see that Donovan is mentioning something in the WhatsApp chat. Let's talk about it in the chat in WhatsApp. Let's talk about it when we can meet in person. We're going to be connecting with some folks this Thursday between 11 and I would say about 2:30. And so people are available. Please come through. Again, we're just trying to build on what we have, get some social media instructions and ideas out there in the open for people to learn from what we're doing and what we're learning. And yeah, continue to engage. Again, I'm trying to make sure that y'all are getting as much as you can while you're here this 4 months. And so definitely continue to check out the book, Atomic Habits. I want to start introducing the next book, and I want you all to be aware of it. It is Get That Money, Honey. Hilarious title. I'm talking about a wealth of information is in that book about fundraising, from small actions to we have a huge organization and how do we keep it growing as a huge organization. So it has a lot to give to us around fundraising. So in the next number of days and weeks, definitely find yourself grabbing that book. We will be talking about it in the chat as well as during these conversations. Again, I also want to throw out next Wednesday, I do want to meet with you guys again. It won't be an official training with a speaker, but it would be something that just like this, I'll be talking, I'll be here to answer questions. Last week, Maria hopped on for a second and we got to chop it up. And that was a good opportunity just to chime in. But also feel free to email us and set up any type of one-on-one you want to have so that we can have those conversations. Diane said that she's open to that too. I'm pretty sure Terry's open to that too. So just because they came and spoken and you got good information, don't feel like you can't reach out to them. They are down to assist, and I know that some of the folks we're going to bring on are going to be open to those conversations as well. So definitely take advantage of that and keep track of this information. So whenever you may need to talk to them, whether it's weeks or months in advance, you'll get that chance to ask some of those questions because you know who has the answers. All right. So I hope y'all have a good one. I will be talking with y'all soon. Again, seeing some folks on Thursday. We're going to be meeting at the community center. I want to say it's my mind is just going blank. But yeah, the community center on 3rd. So we're going to be meeting there on Thursday. Southeast, there it is, Southeast Community Center. So I'll be talking with y'all then. And in the meantime, keep getting after it. Keep getting this good information, and y'all have a good one. Peace.